The ninth speaker at the 2018 La Trobe Business School Innovation in Food and Agribusiness Forum was Scott McKenzie, Chief Executive of Sensor Data. Scott's presentation was entitled Digitisation of the Supply Chains and the Effect on the Internet of Things on Australia's Food and Agribusiness. Scott presented a case study on his company's Smart R tag, which has gone through successful trials with one of Australia's leading growers and packers of fruit and vegetables. The full stack system, available commercially this year, can be used with food or other condition-sensitive goods, such as pharmaceuticals, and provides complete information on product's journey from its origins to the end user. The Smart E tags can be attached to a carton, crate or pallet and will show the product's location, temperature, surrounding air quality and handling through its transit from supplier to wholesaler, distributor and then on to retailers. With food safety regulation being tightened, the Smart R tag is able to prove that a product has been kept in optimum conditions at all times and even provide information on the shelf life of the goods. Now, at the heart of this solution is a miniaturised system on microchip developed by researchers at La Trobe's Centre for Technology Infusion. So please enjoy Scott's presentation.
Today I'm going to be building on some of the excellent previous discussions, some of which have stolen some of my thunder, so I'll be adapting to that. But I'm attempting to demystify what the IoT in fact is and ultimately provide a guide as to what the potential could be for the Australian agribusiness sector. Oh, hang on. That's where we wanted to be. So, mentioned already today is around the global food waste problem, which is a massive issue, both economically, socially and morally. But if we look at it in the longer term, it won't be going away because of the growing population. Economics alone, the $1 trillion a year food waste is not insignificant at all. And in terms of the component within the supply chain, so between, if I get this right, handling and storage through the distribution and market, that comprises a third of the waste that occurs in production. And also you and I in our homes, we waste a lot of product in those places, but our focus is between these parts here. So how can we address that? Intention is visibility. Can you understand what is occurring to the shipment and in what time frame, and why would it have spoiled prematurely? Has it been mismanaged? Has it been treated in the way that it was intended to through any specifications that were appropriate? Ultimately, the intention of providing the visibility and the traceability as to where it occurred, any issues that may have occurred, provides opportunities for rectification or recovery of any value. Information and knowledge can be understood that the more you have, you possibly have more knowledge. So in an old school space, and this is probably not a very good example, but in weather terms, you've only got a single data point and it's not really very informative. But in modern days, weather systems are tracked with multiple and many different data inputs and locations, but also over a temporal basis, you can actually get a lot of information that provides opportunity for modelling and algorithms for forecasting and development of future states. So with knowledge, more data is better. Within and where agribusinesses could benefit is with IoT. The Internet of Things. So what is it? Andrea spoke earlier of the origins of the term. She also addressed in part the hype cycle. And we're about here in the hype cycle. The hype cycle is effectively a process that most new technologies go through, and Forrester Research actually just recently determined that the term of IoT will actually face its death in the near term, and everyone will start talking about the actual capabilities and how they get implemented and the value from them. So that's perhaps good news because you'll be able to understand what they're actually talking about rather than IoT. But the basis of IoT is data capture of relevant aspects of things and objects, and so it's just measuring issues that are relevant. And why? And that's again comes back to the knowledge. The more information you have as to how that can improve the outcomes that you're seeking to drive. The IoT is commonly described as a stack, and it basically with a sensing hardware capability, connectivity system, data management. From that you can generate knowledge and ultimately hopefully some value for the whole exercise. Key parts that are enabling that more recently in terms of technology developments are the low-cost sensing that is available increasingly, and that's driven in part by things like mobile phones, the sensors in those. The industry behind that is enormous and actually driving a lot of advances. Communication networks, clearly everybody's aware of the connectivity, but as rural areas suffer potentially not from having a ubiquitous capability there. Cloud systems and other data structures, analytics are advancing, and ultimately business models, and to the point that the farm wall guys were talking about, the service model. So the next things that are happening is the trends are things like edge processing, which effectively means that the analytics occur where the sensing is at the edge of the system. Low power communications, increasing security requirements within the IoT to prevent from attacks, and ultimately getting to the point where you've got predictive analytics from the data set. And so that comes back to the weather example. You've got more data, improved models, and you can actually start to forecast what's going to occur. And again, the service models, as Farmwall pointed to. So, Industry 4.0, I'm thinking that some people will have attended Arnie's workshop around Industry 4.0. In agri-food space, there's been a progression, and this isn't the right slide, but that's okay, that the technologies have advanced through modern agriculture, mechanisation, green revolutions in terms of biomechanics and things, but now we've got all of these other capabilities that are around capturing data throughout the production system and other technologies, including robotics, drones, and other things like that. So IoT is just a part of the Industry 4.0 in agri-food. And here's this figure again that everybody's been seeing a number of times today about the National Farmers Federation, $100 billion by 2030. So we've all got a similar reference point there. But ultimately, the intention to achieve that, IoT is a key enabler required to actually achieve the efficiency and growth to drive that. And to the point of Andrea this morning around the interface between the agri-food space and the ag tech. Our focus is principally on the supply chain. Our mission is to increase the visibility of the production, from the production source to the consumer, and help people understand what occurred to their goods. So what we do, we sense the parameters that are associated with the goods, the fresh produce, and they act as proxies for the condition. That isn't necessarily, we're not actually measuring the condition, we're actually measuring a proxy of that, but that indicates the quality of the good and the conditions that it's in. Ultimately, we can also prove things like provenance through techniques such as geofencing and other associations. So our intention is to be able to support loss prevention, improve the commercial value of the goods by being able to indicate quality levels that are valuable for around sell pricing and optimising stock management. We can drive improved returns on production input costs and materials, and also potentially enhance producer brand value. It also responds to consumer and regulatory pressures. So our product is called Smarter Tag, and effectively it's an intelligent multi-sensing asset tracking system, and it's reusable and highly flexible. We can capture up to 15 different parameters. We haven't actually identified a use case that would actually need 15, but they're there if you should need them. And it's intended as a low-cost data acquisition capability to provide high-value knowledge and action capabilities. Being designed for reuse, it can be returned to the start point of a supply chain or alternatively head off into a separate supply chain. And the opportunity from the data is that you can ultimately end up with Shelf life strategies, end-to-end food quality visibility, shrinkage reduction and other outcomes that provide commercial entities within the supply chain and other stakeholders benefits in the future. We've had a long development program working with Arnie and his team here at the CTI, and at this point we'll be commercialising the capability in the new year. So what are you trying to do? With IoT, would it be a solution you want to adopt, or can you apply it to your business or anything else that you're trying to drive? Is it your interests? Is it your customers? Whose interests are you trying to benefit, and how can that be brought together? So the issues are standard with any investment profile. You need to think about what is the value proposition and ROI you're seeking, what are the customers, and is there other people that will benefit? How can it be done? Understanding the scope, the timing, how can you actually incrementally approach the solution in stages and trials so that you understand what the actual solution looks like. What effects will it have on your business and other people's business? Is there going to be process changes? Are there operational efficiencies you'll see, and in what time frame? And where James yesterday was pointing to the delay, but the rapid growth of benefits for innovation programs, that just stacks up over time. There will also be potentially changes in ecosystems within the supply chain. So the power dynamics between suppliers and retailers potentially could change. And there is also potentially risk profile change. So people like insurers of product and shipping goods will also be interested in understanding how information that's available through IoT can be applied to their risk profile. Some of you may already have within your car a tracking device where your insurer understands your driving patterns, and you can get your insurance modified on that basis. It's exactly the same thing. That's the Internet of Things. There's one last point, is how do you actually ensure that over time the inclusion of IoT becomes a standard operating capability within your business, rather than just a new thing that's an add-on, in the same way that computers have just become ubiquitous. So an example, where we've been working with a major food group here in Australia, we've done a series of different trials. So tags of that size have been measuring temperature, humidity and shock and acceleration for their goods within their supply chain, and they've taken them all the way from the point where the fruit is picked all the way through the supply chain through to the retailer's distribution centre. And from that they've been able to understand the degradation of the goods. We then take the data back through that stack I mentioned before and ultimately end up with a representation of what the data looks like. So the first thing you've got is the sensor traces of the actual data, and then behind that you've got the analytics that end up with an output that's a higher level of information. This capability has been proven through a series of trials and repeated efforts, and we know that from their use case we've got a capability that is relevant for marketplace. The sensing of the data points against time is critical, because they've already been able to identify when they've got different handlers of the goods and understand when they can modify their actions. The next part of it though, and this is where the interesting thing that that Andrew was pointing to before, is larger data pools. At a single customer's point of view, they'll be able to take their data set and understand how to improve it, but within a longer time frame, a larger data set will be important for them to be able to understand their best practice opportunities, to optimise the way that their capability can be functioning, and also to contribute more broadly to their industry. But again, data security, ownership and coordination needs to be addressed, and these are issues that are going to be important for industry groups to participate in, and I think that there'll be leadership requirements for government and industry groups there. And to this point, we've already identified within our experience in the market competing technologies and competing players starting to have power dynamics occur as to who's got the client and who's got the data and who uses the data for what purpose. So is going to be an interesting space in the near term as to what that data actually means, who's got access to it, and how they can use it for their benefit. I think that critically, where people like Mark Lobo and others in the room at the state and the federal government, I think that there'll be an important part of their leadership from the government to actually make sure that everybody plays fair, but equally the industry groups will be critically required to actually play their role as well. So to conclude, agri-food in Australia can significantly benefit from the implementation of IoT through other ag tech, and ultimately the larger opportunities through bigger data sets. So we look forward to working with the research community, but also the industry groups around how we can implement the IoT in their debate. Thank you.